It's never easy for cities to face the kind of challenges that Chester faces, right? About how they can reinvent the city rather than just trying to relive the past.
The community right now, they're starting to wake up and they're starting to see that they can do their own thing.
There is a spirit of activism and volunteerism here.
We continue to survive and thrive.
Now, a city is infrastructure, but a city is also people. And until you know the people of the city, you don't know Chester.
When you've seen it in that light and you know what we could be, that's why it makes us want to stay.
It wasn't up until recent that I started learning more about my hometown and realizing, all right, I want to stay here.
It takes a village to raise a child.
Why are you so excited about Chester? And I said, well, if I told you that you want to move here, we're too crowded already, so I really don't want to tell you any more than I have to.
It's my reason for being.
They took the word neighborhood away. Now it's hood. It's like, what hood are you from? Once you take the neighbor away from it, you lose context of what you have.
Only time can really tell what will happen to Chester.
Chester is in many ways a sort of a microcosm of the whole history of the United States, and certainly of industrial growth and then decline in America.
I think Chester's history is fascinating, and there's a lot that hasn't been told, but there's a lot that's been told. But I think it's a story that needs to be told, and I think Chester is primed to actually take advantage of their history and revitalize themselves through their historic basis and their current population and where they want to be. They have tons of potential as a city.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Chester and its rich culture from the past. To start with, people have the idea that Philadelphia was the first city in Pennsylvania, and it's not. Chester was the first city, and in fact, William Penn first stepped foot in America, in the New World, here at Chester on what is now the foot of Penn Street.
Penn was a smart fellow. He was a good businessman. They realized one of the things you had to have was you had to have a mill.
When William Penn first landed here in 1682, he had set forth one of the nation's biggest cities.
Crozier bought the whole area of what was called Uppland from the time that the Swedes were here, and he created the Chester mills, which were in fact made a blue material, a blue woolen material called Chester blue, which, lucky for him, became the basic material used in the uniforms for the Union Army in the Civil War. He built the Baptist church and required all of his workers to attend the Baptist church every week. He built a little school that's right next to the Caleb Pusey house, where his workers' children could learn to read the Bible. He basically owned all of the land and all of the housing in Upland, later Chester, and would rent it back. So he had this incredible sort of control over the whole life of Chester and the construction of these mills and the production of all this cloth.
Chester has a courthouse, and this is actually the oldest building of public assembly anywhere in America.
But it was a beginning, and it certainly was the growth of this kind of industrial development. So along with him came a number of other people who became the real founders of Chester, and those were the shipbuilders. Initially it was Roach, and Roach established, Roach shipping, and started to build ships first for commercial use, and then for the U.S. Navy when it became the Navy. And that sparked an incredible growth within Chester of industries of every sort of kind.
We had Sun Shipbuilding, Sun Oil, General Electric, Ford Motor Company, I think it was Aluminium, Aluminum.
Machine shops, carpentry shops, various kinds of construction places. You had the ships, later you had cars. Ford established a construction plant here. Of course, the biggest one was Scott Paper, And for a while, Chester produced 60% of all the toilet paper and paper toweling in the entire world out of Chester. And so this became one of the small hubs. But it also was in an ideal position, because as the road system started to develop, it was along the roads, it had easy access to water, and so it was a sort of a natural place for industry to start to build, and build it did.
In its heyday, Chester had 4 or 5 movie theaters, 4 or 5 department stores, a major Sears and Roebuck, which I actually remember coming to with my father as a child, grocery stores, all the amenities.
A lot of people would come to Chester for entertainment and for fashion and for shopping and other venues. We were as big, if not bigger than Philadelphia at a point that I can remember.
Chester became really the cultural center of Delaware County. If you wanted to go out for dinner at a fancy club, you came to Chester. If you wanted to find out what the latest fashions were coming in from Europe, believe it or not, you came to Chester. And so it became this incredibly lively, important place for the entire of Delaware County.
One of the main staples in Chester, when you mention Chester and arts and culture, one of the names that'll come up would be Ethel Waters. And she was my grandmother's neighbor, so my grandmother would always tell us stories about her growing up.
Bill Haley in the 50s comes out of Chester because it was a really lively place, and a place where that sort of crossover between the African-American music, the jazz and the R&B, and rock and roll is really starting to happen.
Dr. Martin Luther King did his seminary here in Upland, which is part of Chester, at the Crozier Theological Seminary. That is now, the building of the seminary is now part of the Chester Crozier Hospital system. And he did his internship at Calvary Baptist Church.
One of the people who worked in the shipping business, the Shong, was a great art collector. And he actually created the Shong Art Museum, which is still there on Edgemont, empty unfortunately. All of his art's actually here at Widener. But he was a great patron of the arts. And in fact, the castle, which is one of our current buildings, was a building he built for his wife as a wedding present. And so Chester looked like it had nothing but a rosy future going forward. Unfortunately, for reasons that aren't completely clear, both of these companies folded their tents after World War II. Whether it was that they had to reinvest too much in actually making these, to modernize these, or whether they simply didn't want to be involved in it, it's not really clear. But Sun and Roach both go out of business. You know, the Ford plant closes, all these machine shops, all these little businesses that supported industry start to disappear.
Basic community supports, such as grocery stores and movie theaters, they started closing. And it just became a vicious circle.
All this stuff was just blooming and blooming, and then these two big businesses leave, and Chester just starts to fall apart.
There are Chesters anywhere in the area that whoever is listening and watching this, you have Chesters in your area.
The reason I was interested in becoming the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at Widener is because of Widener's history and reputation for its work in the city of Chester.
I was born and raised here, so Chester is home for me, and I'm currently the director of the Chester Senior Center. I've been here 18 years.
The Pennsylvania Humanities Council is very devoted to civic engagement. We see that the humanities is a critical tool to bring communities together and to envision their future.
My company is the Artist Warehouse, and we've been in Chester all of my life. I established it probably like 13, 14 years ago. And we always been self-sustaining, self-sufficient, no grants, no loans. We still get the work done. We still work in the communities.
I actually live as a neighbor to the city, and I've been with the city in the planning department working on special projects for the past 4 years.
Being a part of Chester, since I was born and raised here, I feel like it is my duty to give back to my great city, wherever it sees fit. With me, it's more so dealing with the younger generation, and instilling in them the values that I've learned.
I'm Reverend Jim Lay. I'm Archdeacon of the Episcopal Diocese of Pennsylvania and a social justice activist here in the city of Chester. I am involved with many organizations. I'm vice chair of Chester Eastside Inc. It's now Inc. I work very closely with Widener University. I'm on the President's Community Advisory Committee, the Bonner High Impact Strategic Planning, and I do a great many guest lectures here for faculty of Widener. And I've been doing it for now about 15 years.
When you heard the expression 6 degrees of separation and Chester's 1.5, we all know each other intimately. Either we went to school together, I'm a former teacher, I might have taught their children, I might have volunteered or had interaction with them when I was active with the PTO.
Chester, for me, always has been, it's just been almost plain sailing. I mean, I never experienced anything bad myself living in the city, but there's always been those tales that have floated around.
Many people stay behind their doors and they don't meet together in their neighborhoods or around particular issues. That's not the truth in Chester. People get together and they talk. They're active and they're organized. And this was a place where we knew that people would come out because there is a spirit of activism and volunteerism here that is unparalleled throughout the state.
Being the director of the Senior Center, and a lot of people will say I'm biased, but I think we do great work for older adults in the city of Chester and even the surrounding areas, because most people think that it's just bingo and games and exercise, but we provide a lot of social supports in terms of health insurance counseling, medication counseling, housing counseling, counseling for depression. We help people with legal issues. If they can't pay for their prescriptions, we find a way to make sure people can get the medicines that they need. If they don't have transportation, we find a transportation service. If Mrs. Jones can't take care of her home the way that she used to, we'll bring in chore services to help her clean. We'll find reputable, affordable contractors to help do some handiwork or whatever might need to be done. I call it a country club for older adults, You come, you hang out, we do anything and everything. And that's one of our biggest challenges as well, fighting the stigma of what a senior center is. Like a lot of people would think that it on the border of a nursing home where people have walkers and canes and everybody's slow and nobody knows what's going on, everybody's asleep. It is such the opposite. We have people who are line dancing and tap dancing, traveling to Vegas and on cruises, and people that are taking painting classes and ceramics. They're sewing, they're doing everything. They're very, very active, very independent, and they are the complete opposite picture or image of what most people think older adults are.
I am collaborating on a project called Chester Made, which brings together a number of arts organizations as well as the City of Chester and Widener University to envision an arts and culture district for the future.
I was the designer of the logo, and I helped them facilitate a couple of events in downtown Chester.
What this did was really do something that was needed. for the community, and that was just to make sure that arts and culture were identified and celebrated and promoted as they should be.
And what Chester Made is all about is really letting people share their stories.
Stories are the beginning and the end of this project called Chester Made. And what we've been doing in Chester for the month of February is we collected hundreds of stories. And these stories are going to form literally a map. As we were asking people to come out and tell their stories, we said, let's get your story on the map.
If you're from Chester and you're an artist or you're an art lover and you see something like this that's going on, get up and get involved with it.
Well, to me, Chester Made is capturing a sense of place. Every place has its own unique identity, and Chester Made is Chester Made. And what we want to do is celebrate the people that are there on the ground, creating art, part of the culture.
Any movement in the arts is important, whether it's Chester Made, whether it's another group or organization doing something. I think it's all needed in Chester, but just the name Chester Made, it rings a bell to the people in the community. And it's sort of like a wake-up call that if you are branded here in Chester, just get up, get out and do something.
This is what I heard the moment I came into Chester, well, if we're going to have an arts and culture district, it's got to be Chester Made.
Part of what's been really great about bringing back this slogan, Chester Made, is that on the one hand it echoes the pride and the manufacturing history of Chester, and at the same time it helps us really remember the pride that we've had in the arts and help us see that there's a lot of really cool arts stuff going on right now that was invisible to a lot of people, and now Chester Made and that slogan is making it visible.
Next year the Chester Made brand could be international instead of just Chester. The main thing is to help it grow.
It's an identity, it's a brand, and it's saying that arts and culture is happening in Chester. Come see it.
Chester.
The city of Chester.
Crozier Chester Medical Center.
In the city of Chester.
It's on the streets of Chester.
4 people, including a 2-year-old boy, have been killed in the last week and a half in the city of Chester.
A police officer shot in the city of Chester. Heavily armed officers swarm the scene. 2 suspects are shot dead. Others are arrested.
The senseless violence on the streets of Chester. That's why there are more police out tonight, including state troopers. This is the result of 4 murders in just 8 days. One of them, a little boy.
A city in crisis is turning to drastic measures. Chester is now declaring a state of emergency.
The murder rate here in Chester has prompted the mayor to take action. We're talking 11 homicides so far this year, 4 of them just in the past week.
Saturday night, the big story in Action News is a community in mourning, and undoubtedly there are a lot of people shaking their heads and asking, when's it going to stop?
I'll tell you exactly how the media portrays Chester. The fact of the matter is, the media is there for return on investment. They portray Chester as this dangerous, terrible, rough place where there are killings and shootings, and it's almost like there's a rampage going on in Chester, and it's simply not true.
All of us kind of collectively hold our breath because we're so connected here, we know who it affects. And so, good news or bad, if we do hear something, we kind of listen to see who it affects, because in the long run, it usually affects more, our circle gets a little bigger.
That's another two-sided coin right there, because the things that they do report in Chester, they are happening, but they're isolated incidents.
Every time you would look in the paper is a story about the murder rate and violence. And you know, last night I was involved in the newsroom story focus program with Phil Herron that focused on the downtown art scene. That's a much different story.
But that's another reason why, you know, we have to stand up, and, you know, the violence, gun violence is really big too. Homicide and everything like that. But I feel like we should, if we come together and create programs to help them out, or create, you know, some type of structure, I feel like, and come together, because there's too many, you know, we're separated a lot of times. But if we do come up with programs, and I feel like that would help us out a whole lot.
Media is media. They hit the hot topics, whether it's crime or violence. And I think people in Chester know there's a lot more than that happening. And I think everyone in Chester actually sees the potential, and they want change and improvement, just like everybody does. And I think I actually see momentum now that there's more positive media out there about what's happening, and that can all start with arts and culture.
So I think it's important for the people in the city, for the community, to fight to promote what is good, to keep sharing news stories, press releases, whatever have you, about the positive programs that we're having. You know, to make our voices heard, to share the good news of the things that are going on in this city. I think we're going to have to do it. We can't rely on the media because it has not changed in 40, 50 years.
We have a lot of positive things that's happening in Chester that never get the recognition. And if you know anything about media and about the news, their main caption is, if it bleeds, it leads. Me, I don't read the newspapers that often because I don't want to be hammered down with a lot of negative images. I stay in my art studio with a bunch of artists and we paint our own picture. The key is for Chester to stop worrying about how they're being painted, pick up their own paintbrushes and paint their own story.
We have to continue to be encouraged and to know that change does take time. Especially good change, lasting change. It can take years, but as long as there's something positive going on, then we are making progress. And it takes all of us united to make it happen.
And so the question is, how do you really rebuild a place like Chester?
Go out there and make the difference that you want to see take place.
What I would love to see as a resident is new businesses crop up, a new downtown district crop up, and just new communities. I mean, I love meeting new people. And one of the things I would love to see is just people coming around from all parts of Chester and all parts of the area and show their support.
We live in Chester, we work in Chester, we study in Chester, and that means we are Chester made. We have to think of ourselves as part of Chester. And so it's not about going into Chester to do service or to do something, but to really understand yourself as part of it. And that's a very different kind of way of thinking about yourself and your relationship. I think when we do that kind of, when we think about ourselves in that kind of way, as real partners with other people, as fellow citizens of Chester, that the learning opportunities multiply 1,000-fold.
The community right now, they're starting to wake up and they're starting to see that they can do their own thing. And I think instead of giving to them, I would rather hear them say, we're building together. Because you don't have to give me anything. If you want to build something and we can work together on some things, I'm with that. But as far as like the words, to me, it just seems funny when a person says, what can you do for a person? No, what can we do together?
I think that Chester has people who are really resilient, who are really proud, who are rightly proud of their history, but also have some really incredible, creative ideas about how they can reinvent the city rather than just trying to relive the past.
Like, it wasn't up until recent that I started learning more about my hometown and realizing, all right, I want to stay here.
As I call it, it's labor intensive and not capital intensive. That is, we're focusing on people and investment in people rather than big, shiny buildings. And I think that we have a model here that learns from what other people's mistakes have been, that I think is really going to allow for development that is owned by the people, run by the people, and will keep the people here. And that, I think, is unbelievably exciting.
I think there's a very rich future for Chester. It'll never be what it was. It can't be. You can never go back. But it can become something great.